Okay, Nick and Andy, huge Champions League semi-final first leg coming up. Arsenal against Paris Saint-Germain in North London. What a semi-final, by the way. Two young, attack-minded teams. Nick, is it fair to say these are the best balanced teams remaining in the competition? I mean, they're both decent defensively. Obviously, a lot of good young talents going forward. And it should just play out for a very end-to-end, exciting, entertaining semi-final.
Yeah, you're right. It should. And I think, yes, on the best balanced teams, but I think the margins are also finer than usual when you make that list. It's a really intriguing Final Four altogether, if you will. PSG, to me, again, they certainly have stars, but they don't have the megawatt names or as many megawatt names as they used to have. And it's kind of neat because if you were to place these players in a unit on another team, you might say that, oh, look at all these big names, but because it's PSG, it feels a little bit more cohesive. And I want to give a lot of credit to the manager for that. And that's not just from, Barcelona background. I think you're going to see two teams that may be feeling each other out for quite a while too. I mean, end to end, right, with possession, but yeah, there's going to be some, let's see how we measure up.
Andy, in terms of Arsenal, we know how big a moment this is for them in their project under Mikel Arteta. It feels like he's been building to this moment, ever since he got the job and wanting to get them back to this kind of stage. I mean, it's their first Champions League semi-final, since 2009. So do you think there'll be a lot of nerves in comparison to the Real Madrid game about how close they are to getting to a final? I mean, what do you think the vibe will be around Arsenal? Because on the flip side of it, they've beaten Real Madrid in the quarters to get to this stage. They should really have no fear, right, of knocking out the kings of Europe in the last round.
Yeah, logically that makes sense, right? But then you get into that moment and you realize the magnitude of what is at stake and what is 180 minutes away. I imagine there will be some nerves for both sides because, like you say, they're both pretty young and inexperienced at this point of this competition. I think that probably, though, Arsenal may be a little bit better suited to deal with that, given there's a little bit more experience in that team. And like you say, having gotten past Real Madrid in the last round. I also think, though, kind of tactically speaking, I don't think Arsenal can play an open end-to-end counter-attacking game with PSG. Look at the names in that PSG team. Kvaratskhelia was fantastic against Aston Villa. Barcola on one side, Dore, Dembele. If this game gets open, I think it favors PSG a lot. Probably Arteta, what he's going to be looking for in this tie, no more than 4 goals, maybe. I think that's probably Arsenal's best route into the final is if they're able to control and set up a little bit more defensively, because we saw PSG can do it multiple different ways. They can play the counterattacking game. They can get numbers back and defend because everybody works hard and defends. To me, Arsenal's kind of a not one-dimensional side, but they certainly lack the X factor and the game changer. Aside from Bukayo Saka up top.
Yeah, I mean, Nick, when we talk about these two teams, though, Arsenal beat PSG 2-0 in the league phase way back on October 1st, earlier in this competition. So they have that confidence knowing they can do that. But I think PSG have got better. Clearly, we've seen that as the season's gone on, as a lot of new, younger players have molded and gelled together, like you mentioned, under Luis Enrique. What a great job he's done to make them that cohesive unit, up and down the pitch together, the intensity, the hunger, the drive they play with, and the lack of fear as well. And that's what excites me most about this game is that in many ways, it feels like PSG have almost followed Arsenal's playbook in terms of the way that Arsenal have developed over the last few years with the young players, the young attacking talents. But maybe they just have a bit of a deeper squad in terms of the array of talents that they can choose from, and like Andy mentioned, throw at you and hurt you in different ways. So, I mean, how do you sort of see this? Because PSG obviously squeezed past Villa to get to this semi-final, but deservedly so. But I do still have some maybe question marks about them defensively because they crumbled, but nearly crumbled at Villa Park in the quarterfinal and the second leg there. So I think that will give Arsenal a lot of belief that they can go out and really go at PSG in the first leg, just like he did against Real Madrid to set the tone for that quarterfinal and ultimately get through.
Yeah, tournament football is also a process, right? And once you get to this level, you've got to experience playing in your first semifinal. I mean, this is the first time you can touch, right? Yeah. You can touch the final. You can go into a game. That dream at night is, hey, if we just take care of business here. And that, I think, is interesting, could play into for both sides. The other thing that I think is an interesting variable, guys, is PSG have had their title, the league title, decided for weeks and have just been gearing towards this. Arsenal have known they're not going to win the league, but have still had to answer questions about that, etc., up until this. So which of those is a better, I don't want to say distraction or planning mode or whatever. Yeah. There's a lot of intangible, if you will, or maybe it depends how you view tangibility, I guess. But it's interesting to me beyond the talent. And then the X factor for me is in the midfield. Vitinha, a player that we saw very briefly for Wolves, has emerged as the guy that Wolves thought they were getting from Porto. And how, who's going to run the show? Is it going to be him? Is it going to be Odegaard? Is it going to be Rice, who has stepped up in so many big moments? So, yeah, I think there's a lot of questions that we'll be talking about entirely differently about the second leg once we see how this one goes, even though they played earlier this year.
Oh, exactly. And I think, Andy, Nick's mentioned it perfectly. The midfield scrap is going to be juicy and delightful with these two teams. Very similar systems, three in the middle there. Obviously, I think the midfield won Arsenal the tie against Real Madrid and really dominated that area of the pitch and was the difference. But the way PSG pass and move, the way Fabian Ruiz, Vitinha, like Nick said, João Neves, Zaire Emery can come on and do that. They've got so many players there that are really comfortable in this system and know exactly what they're going to do. It's difficult to stop, isn't it? And then it's difficult to stop them getting the ball to Dembele, Kvaratskhelia, Dore, all the players that we mentioned there. So it feels like, once again, midfield's going to be key. And maybe I'd just give Arsenal the edge, but it's very, very tight in that area of the pitch.
Yeah, I like both the midfields because of, like you say, how well balanced they are. They've got a real sturdy base there, and then they've got someone, whether it's Neves or Rice on both sides that are just as comfortable dropping back and defending or pushing on and being that fourth, fifth, sixth man into the attack. And then there's obviously I think the established superstar in Odegaard and a very quickly rising superstar in Ruiz on the other side. Another area that I think is actually going to be really, really important based on what we saw in PSG versus Villa was how much the fullbacks, Hakimi and Mendes, got forward. They had so many shooting opportunities from 12 yards out, where at times they were the furthest forward attacking player for PSG. The balance of trying to do that against Villa, I think that's what cost them a little bit there in the second half when the comeback started, because they were a little bit too overexposed. Similarly, in the way that Tottenham Hotspur have been under Ange Postecoglou, the way that he loves to get those fullbacks forward and it takes the team out of balance. I think maybe they can get away with that just a little bit more against Arsenal, because Villa are such a counterattacking team. But I think that makes Gabriel Martinelli probably the most important Arsenal player in this tie, because that's going to be the player who is going to have the opportunity as the outlet to run in space, to run at defenders one-on-one, or maybe even one-on-none at times. And so, if the tie comes down to him, that's a bit of an uncomfortable situation, I think, probably for Arsenal fans to be in.
Yeah, but you're right. Out wide there, it's going to be brilliant. Euron Timber going up against Barcola or Doué on the left, and then like Hakimi flying down the other wing, Kvaratskhelia. Dembele, we know he likes to drift out wide and cut inside. So Arsenal fullbacks, if it's Lewis, Skelly and Timber, they're going to know that they're going to be in a game and a tie over the 180 minutes. They're going to be up and down, and they definitely, like you said, will need a lot of defensive work from the players in front of them. I can't wait for this game. We talked about basically every individual scrap throughout the pitch. I cannot wait for this one. Nick, score prediction time, mate. What do you think for the first leg?
Geez. I'm going to go 2-1 to PSG. Okay. Just going to Thought Mob while we were speaking. and looking at the individual performers in the Champions League, another player we didn't mention, 3 of the top 6 performers, according to that website, our friends, of course, Dembele, Hakimi, and Nuno Mendes. And, you know, it'll be a real test for Miles Lewis-Skelly's composure, because we hear him talked about week in and week out as a player ahead of his years. Well, you're going to have to be in this tie. And I do, yeah, maybe that's the tipping point for me, is the young players that Arsenal will be counting on.
Yeah, I mean, Andy, it's going to be quite the spectacle. First leg, Arteta's got the rallying call going out saying, Arsenal fans, bring everything. Wear your shin pads, your boots, your shorts, your kit. Like, come prepared to help us. It feels to me that it's just not Arsenal's year. We don't know yet, but it just feels like there's something special for them on nights like this at the moment, and they are rising to the occasion as a unit and as a club. I'm going to go 2-1 to Arsenal. I think Nick's got the scoreline right, but I just think it's going to be either way, whoever can be the most clinical. And I think Saka, the form he's been in, and the form some of Arsenal's top players at the moment are in, Rice, Odegaard, etc. I think they're legit, but it's going to be really tight. What are you going for, mate?
Yeah, I've got 2-1 as well, and I'm going to go with Nick for, yeah, I think you laid it out perfectly. Lewis Skelly has been fantastic this year, but this moment, how often do we see that youngster, that teenager, that player who's, you know, around 1,000, 1,200, whatever minutes as a professional, get to a moment like this and you know, not fall apart, but it's just not quite the same from them. I think that it, you know, maybe if there is a weak point for PSG to really get at, maybe that's it.
All right, head over to Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com for all the latest on Arsenal against Paris Saint-Germain. UEFA Champions League semi-final first leg in North London. Cannot wait for this one. What a beauty of a game this is. Let's see who has an advantage, if anybody, heading into that second leg in Paris.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Lowe, and as we head towards the end of an exciting Premier League season, make sure you like and subscribe on the NBC Sports YouTube channel for more content like this.